the evolution of the hydroplane. They've been racing hydros in Seattle for 5 decades, and now we're ready to race again.
The 1999 Vintage Hydro Heat at Seafair.
The 50th anniversary of Seafair, the vintage boats are going out. Bill Rocky, I know, was on the deck there of one of the boats a moment ago, but they're waving him off so they can get the boats out on the course. There they go. Bill?
Steve, I almost went for a ride there, Steve. Dave Williams in the Madison was going to talk to us, but he's on a tough schedule here, so he basically told me to get off the boat because he's got to go. And these things are beautiful. This is really fun to look at. Everybody that's watched hydroplanes for so many years, this is really going to be fun to watch.
Ken Muscatel finally got the Miss Burien going. Let me set the field for you here, and then we'll bring in Mike and Scotty to talk about these boats. We've got the 1959 Miss Thriftway. The 1960 Lazy Boy presents Miss Burien. I actually rode along in that, about 115 miles an hour on this course. It was fun. 1967 Miss Budweiser, the 70 Atlas Van Lines, and then a replica of the 71 Miss Madison and the 79 Tempest. And for those folks, and there are lots of them, who remember thunderboats when there really was thunder on Lake Washington, this has got to be a great moment, Scott.
Well, this is a great moment. The Tempest, watching that is painted as the Budweiser here. I actually turned the fastest lap in that boat that had ever been turned, and brought back a memory when I saw that boat. And a lot of people asked me, said, well, would you ever get back in these boats? And it's, no, not with the turbines. I'd kind of been there and done that. But, boy, if I could be in something that made noise again, I'd be back in a second.
Oh, man, this is worth the price of admission right here. Let me tell you, some of these boats are kind of masquerading a little bit, and I'll tell you which ones. The Miss Madison actually isn't the Miss Madison. Believe it or not, that's the old Savior's Mist. But it is painted up as the Miss Madison only because there's a motion picture being made called Madison about the brilliant Cinderella victory of the Miss Madison in the 1971 Gold Cup race, and they're shooting that with this particular boat. The original Miss Madison is in no condition to play itself in the movie, but boy, does that look great. Jim McCormick drove that to a victory of the Miss Madison in 1971 in the Gold Cup in Madison, Indiana. Turned that little town of 13,000 people on their ear, and then went on to win the Atomic Cup just 2 weeks later on the Columbia River. Dave is driving that one. Dave Williams, the president of the museum. And also out there, we have another boat under disguise, and that's the Atlas Van Lines boat. Thriftway that you see, the 1959 Thriftway, that's the real McCoy. That's the Miss Thriftway. The Atlas Van Lines, which is bringing up the rear to the line here, was actually that one, the white one with blue trim, was actually the Pay and Pack's Little Buzzard. That was a gold and orange and black trim boat on the 1970 Atomic Cup. Tommy Tucker Pulp was the driver, lost his life in that boat, in fact, in the same year, 1970, down in San Diego. And the bright red Miss Budweiser boat, that's actually Chuck Hickling's original Tempest. But the thing that I think has got to be one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. There's the Tempest boat that Scotty had the fastest lap in. In fact, when Chuck Hickling designed, built, and drove that boat at the age of 65 back in 1978. Bill Muncie was his crew chief. The boat you're seeing in your center screen right now, the drop sponsor 1967 Miss Budweiser, the latest completion, by the way, of the Hydroplane and Raceboat Museum. That is the real McCoy also. Bernie, who was looking at it just the other day, was absolutely enthralled with this gorgeous boat. Originally, it was the Notre Dame, the first Notre Dame in 1962. Colonel Warner Gardner drove that race boat. Later on, it was the Shoo-Shoo, then bought by Bernie to run the remainder of the 1967 season when his driver was killed. Bill Brow, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame last night here in Seattle. And Mike Thomas drove that particular boat to a brilliant victory over Billy Shoemaker in the Yellow Miss Bardolph up at Kelowna, British Columbia, the 1967 BC Cup. So, well, I tell you, there's some terrific history here. This boat, of course, the third of the Thriftway line, the immediate successor to the Thriftway that hit the Coast Guard boat out here in 1958. Bill Muncie had his most successful several seasons aboard that boat. It was also called the Century 21 when it was promoting the Seattle World's Fair in 1961 and 62. Willard Rose was the owner. This particular boat, the 60 Miss Burien, of course, started out its life as Tempest. Peter Weck owned the boat. It burned with Chuck Hickling driving it in the very first race. It was in here on Lake Washington, but it went on to run as the Savior's Probe and a variety of other names, and it ran for a good many years right up into the late 1970s.
Wow, if we just close our eyes for a minute and just listen, you'd almost think you were back in Middle to late 1950s, and there was no Seahawks or Mariners, and not even a Space Needle, and everything revolved around seafair and the boat races. Here come the big old piston boats down this front straight. Let's just listen as, well, almost all of them come down the front straight.
That's a beautiful sound, isn't it?
Isn't that something? I'm a kid again. It's gorgeous.
Having come here years after these boats ever ran on the water, it is a treat for me. And knowing some of these guys, Dave Williams and Ken Muscatel, and all the volunteers and all the time that has gone in to restore these boats, it is an incredible story that these things are even on the water in many cases.
It's a labor of love like you can't believe. It's all volunteers. These guys are doing this with a nickel and a dime, and they did a beautiful restoration, and they're to be commended for this. And I'll bet a lot of these fans go home tonight talking about, did you hear it? Did you hear it? They might even get a few of those old little boats that pulled behind the bicycles out again and up and down the streets of Seattle.
I'm going to dust mine off, that's for sure. That's the sound that made Seattle a boat racing capital of the world, no question about it. These engines, World War II vintage Allison V12, 1710 cubic inches, Rolls-Royce 1610s. Man.
It is such a different sight for all of us to see the driver, to see him sitting up so high behind that engine. And you can imagine when there was trouble, how vulnerable that driver, there's Ken Muscatel in the Miss Burien, how vulnerable that driver was.
Oh, he certainly was. If that nose pitched in, these are shovel nose boats, rounded nose, not pickle fork. And when that nose pitched in, that driver catapulted out just like a rocket.
Well, I drove these front engine boats in the beginning of my career, and I'll tell you, they were a handful. And when everything was going really, really great, the best part of it was you had a mouthful of oil.
Fumes, vibration, and that prop shaft running right down between your legs. What a great sight.
And Michael, watch this, the Atlas copy. That thing can't turn. And so when he gets down here, he takes this poor guy out in the Budweiser. You notice they don't put the real drivers in them, because we would have blown up these things already. I would have gone out there and hot rodded that thing like no tomorrow.
Yeah, you don't want to see 170 in the chute just to remember what it felt like. And these, of course, are being deliberately kept below the actual pace they're capable of, because let's face it, these are museum pieces, friends. These are antiques. These are race boats that are here for posterity, and you don't want to hurt them at all.
Ah, yeah, you do. I blew up a lot of Rolls Royces. Let's get another one.
You know, a number of these hulls found in somebody's backyard, sitting there just kind of wasting away someplace before they finally got their hands on them, and with donations and tender loving care, they have brought these boats back. That Miss Burien, for instance, the one I rode in about 2 months ago with Dave Williams at the controls, just a little yellow strap to hang on to. And we, like I said, did about 115 and hit a hole up here in the south turn. And I said, that's about enough for me. Thanks very much.
Well, this comes from an era when the popular school of thought was you did not want to be strapped in the boat. Today, the guys are strapped in the boats. These guys wanted to be able to be pitched clear. That was the theory, that you'd be far safer. Of course, we lost a few fellows trying to test that theory over the years. But these particular boats were certainly the precursors. That 59 Thriftway was perhaps one of the best running boats of its era. It ran 20 consecutive heats without an engine failure in the early 1960s in competition with Bill Muncie driving.
I think that Thriftway's out there hunting for a Coast Guard cutter. We had one out here in the corner. I think he's hunting them down.
Yeah, it was a little large, so Muncie preferred the smaller utility boats.
Wouldn't it be great if we had an engine package again that made that kind of noise?
Yeah, it certainly would be. And I think that fans up and down the beach who remember these boats and, of course, enjoy the speeds of the turbine era lament the fact that unlimited hydroplanes are just not noisy enough anymore.
Yeah, they're beautiful, aesthetic machines and brutally fast, but, you know, the type of racing I'm involved now, I'll tell you, people are there to hear the noise. They want to hear it.
Well, I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who grew up sort of in this neighborhood, maybe down in the Georgetown area or up in the Rainier Beach area, and as kids used to hear these boats out here practicing, and they'd come running over the hill and down Genesee Park and down to the waterfront to see their favorite drivers, probably dragging their little wooden boats behind their bikes all the while.
Well, and they could hear them for 10, 15 miles away.
Oh, absolutely. The nuns at St. Mary's knew where I was when I wasn't in school.
You still got the welt marks in your hands.
Oh, I
on the
do,
ruler.
yeah. Yeah, the Board of Education went across my knuckles, but I grinned the whole way. Man, I was down there to watch the Thriftway run.
You know what is really kind of ironic here, everybody, for those of us who are in the computer generation now, and I was on the World Wide Web just the other day on the internet looking for information on all these boats. There is a wealth of historical information and photos and stories on the internet. Just log on, find Seafair, find UHRA, find Hydro Museum. There's any number of places that you can catch up on where these boats are, who these drivers were, and really get a history lesson about not only hydroplane racing, the Unlimiteds, but what this city was like and what this boat racing venture meant to this city over the years.
And maybe this would be the shot in the arm the museum needs. You know, they have struggled for years, and boy, they have put their effort out. And maybe by doing this, people of Seattle will reach in their pocket and say, God, we want to see more of this, and we'll be able to enjoy this. And maybe someday they'll put some of the real drivers in them and get them going a little faster. You know, I just want to see them go faster.
I can't help but think that the late Bob Williams is sitting up and having smiling at this, because this was his dream and he never lived to see it happen. But Dave Williams picked things up, no relation, but Dave has just been a dynamo with the museum and has done some incredible things with the help of a great board of directors, Dr. Ken Muscatel and his assistants as chair of the board, and they've just done a terrific job. If you ever get a chance to go down to the museum, this kind of history that you see out here on the race course is just the tip of the iceberg. They've got some marvelous stuff down there.
And they're always looking for volunteers to help put these boats together. So any of you that have any skills at all in any fiberglass, paint, mechanical, woodworking ability, all these boats were built out of wood. Just feel free to contact Dave Williams and the Unlimited Hydroplane Hall of Fame and Museum, and they'd be happy to put you to work.
What I will say is this is the closest race we've had all day right here.
Yeah, they're
watching these boats.
They're bunched in there all right, but when the days but a lot of folks look back on these races and say, wow, they always race so much closer, so much more exciting. Actually, it really wasn't. When you take a look at it, we had the same kind of laps typically, and the same kind of differentiation. The more powerful teams, the better finance teams, and the lesser finance teams that we have the present day. It really wasn't all that much, but of course, time kind of dulls the edges of our memories to a certain extent. We recall things slightly different from the way they really were.
Well, people want to remember what they can remember, but having grew up in the sport through the Rolls-Royce era and the Allison era and into the turbine era and then another 10 years in the sport with turbines, I can assure you the turbines are much more reliable than these were.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, Scott's dad had the Parkos O-ring mist boats and ran the very same motors you're hearing right here. Did you ever ride in those little ones?
In
the Parko boat?
No, never did ride in any of my dad's Unlimiteds. I worked on them as a child. Basically, I got in the way, and that was my introduction. I was first in Seattle when I was 11 years old in 1966 when my dad had the Dixie Cola. And what I would give to see, you know, those boats. Actually, the Parko boat, it belongs to Bob Patterson in Van Nuys, and I've often had thoughts of trying to acquire the boat and restoring it in my dad's memory because he was taken from me when I was 16.
Yeah, the Parko, as a matter of fact, when it ran as Miss Bahia, but a few years back with Ron Armstrong driving, actually won a race.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing when we had it. The thing wouldn't get out of its own way.
We may have trouble getting these guys off the course. I got a feeling, a sneaking hunch, that they are just about having as much fun as they're ever going to have in front of 300,000 people again. The old boats, Dave Williams, Ken Muscatel, and all the other drivers out there. Congratulations to them, and thanks to them for making this 50th anniversary celebration of Seafair just a little bit extra special.
The guys at the truck are wondering how many laps. You guys forget we used to run 90 miles with these boats. We're going to be here till Tuesday.
Well, it looks like old Muscatel, you know, he's leading this deal. It's the first time he's had a chance to lead anything all day, and he's just having a ball. I'm going to blow somebody off today.
Actually, he's not. The Thriftway's leading it.
Oh, I see. Well,
I think they're getting the high side, too, now.
Yeah, they are, but these guys don't want to come in. They're going to run them all out of gas and get towed home.
Yeah, our final will be at 6 o'clock because we have these littered all over the track.
What a sight. What a special treat.
Beautiful, beautiful thing. They're to really need a big hand for this.
There's the Miss Burien is coming in. The Miss Thriftway still out there, making its way around the course.
And wouldn't you know, Michael, the one I drove was the only one that broke down.
Wouldn't you know, huh, Scott?
Yeah. Who'd have thunk?
It's painted up as the Budweiser because, believe it or not, in the Madison movie, it's the villain boat.
Well, yeah, that goes
true to
without
life
saying.
or what?
That is true to life. That goes without saying.
This is art copying life.
And I'm hearing in the background a count. We have a 10 to the 5 now, so I'm guessing we're going to run the Consolation after all.
Provisional heat, yeah, the winner of which will slide in as the trailer boat in the final. That is, if you can ever get these antiques off the water. They're still getting ready to set up and come again.
Let's go down to the pits because Bill Rocky has got Ken Muscatel. I believe Ken is already in. Let's go to Bill Rocky.
Steve, like you were saying, I think he wants to go back out and run this thing. You guys had a great time out there. You didn't want to come in.
You know what? The last couple laps, it was really racing. It was fun. But I kept looking and said, man, I got to make that next heat. Oh, it's great. People love it.
You guys have put in so much work to make this happen. This is really rewarding.
Yeah, it is rewarding for all these volunteers at the museum. David Williams, the executive director, really made this happen, and for all the sponsors in City of Peoria and Lazy Boy and all the people who got in behind this thing. It made something magical happen. It's pretty cool.
You guys didn't have any side bets in this race, did you, or anything like that?
I should have laid a bet. I should have bet that he was going to come on the inside. I didn't know they were actually going to do stuff like that. So, I thought, should I slam the door on him or not? I said, oh, man, that would be unsporting.
Okay, thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun to watch. Let's go over to Bill Wixie.
Hey, thanks, Bill. Over here on the other side of the pit, I'm joined by one of the true legends of racing, Bob Fendler. And, Bob, this has got to be a real special treat for you to be able to watch the Thunderboats out on Lake Washington once again.
Well, of course, the reason they have the name Thunderboats are the sound, and it is. It's a great thrill. The guys did well, and it's an exciting remembrance for the people here in Seattle.
Driving those boats so many years ago, what are your fondest memories of Lake Washington, Seafair, and the great boats of yesteryear?
Well, most important, of course, for everybody is the sound. There's a tremendous amount of noise that you don't have with the turbines. It's very fast. We were open cockpit. We were sitting behind the engine. The sensation of speed is incredible, and it's a world of freedom. Might be similar to the open biplanes with the open cockpits.
An amazing sight today on Lake Washington. Bob Fendler, thanks for joining us. We'll send it back upstairs to you, Steve.
Bill, thanks so much. It's always fun to hear from the guys who were here many years ago and helped this sport grow and continue on to today. Well, we are going to continue our racing. We've got the Consolation Heat coming up in a couple of minutes, and then we'll have the finals of the General Motors Cup at Seafair. A day long of fun and racing and air shows and all the rest still going on.